Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus. This is the weekend warm-up. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my co-pilot, as always, Duck. He's always up in the air. That's Josh Nunn here from the Action Network. Every Friday, we come to you live, getting together everything for a Friday card as well as Saturday, hoping to keep you in the black. This weekend, we're going to go through market movements, injury reports, everything you need to know leading up to firing those bets in and tracking them in the award-winning Action Network app. And since we're live, you can check it out right here in the YouTube chat. You can go ahead, cut it up with other fans of the program, and ask us questions directly. You could also tag us on Twitter or hit us up on the Action Network Discord. We want to get to as many of your questions as we can in the next 45 minutes or so. But before we get into the bets, there's a quick and easy way for you to tail us. First, sign up for Action Network Pro. You'll get instant notifications when any Action Network expert tracks a bet. That's Stucky, myself, Duck, Christian, Ojakjian, the whole team. Any single sport that you are following, you want to get the best bets critically at the best prices. And you can only do that by signing up for Action Pro. Plus, you get also access to our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and his predictive analytics team and a ton of other benefits. And right now, if you go ahead and fire this purchase in, you're going to have a special offer attached to it. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and get $20 off the annual price with the promo code BBOC20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use the promo code BBOC20 to get $20 off a year of Action Pro. All right, Doc, I'm going to kick it to you first to kind of wax poetic about where we are at the season, how much we've already seen, what's to come, how you're feeling about, the market, futures market, these teams starting to gel, some of these teams throwing up the white flag, because we already have one team that's punched not a ticket to the big dance, but at least they can hang a banner, and that's Navy winning the Patriot League regular season title. These championships are going to start coming fast and furious in the next few weeks. Talk me through how you're feeling.
Yeah, we've got 2 weeks left in the regular season, and it's just really interesting because there's been a lot of modification to some of these conference tournaments that are no longer taking every participant in each league. And so you have teams that are eliminated from postseason contention while still having games left in the regular season. I'll be interested to see with some of those teams how the apathy sets in, or if the coaches kind of start to turn the page to next year and start to play some young guys. It's a fairly new problem though, as we haven't seen a lot of this with the conferences modifying their conference tournaments in some time. So it's going to be real interesting to see that. But we've also seen examples of teams that are just scrapping their identity in favor of trying something new. Specifically, Pepperdine. They were playing a real slow, grinded out style, a real defensive focus there with the Waves. And over the last 3 weeks or so, they have completely scrapped that idea. They're playing fast. They've given up on playing defense. Coppin State the other way. Coppin State was playing faster, and now they're grinding games down to a snail's pace. So you'll want to kind of reevaluate some of these teams based on changing of the pace, effort, personnel changes. A thing to watch right now as well is injuries. Everybody's banged up at this point in the season, but injury news can be devastating to a team's performance or their trajectory. Case in point, Texas Tech. But some teams are getting healthy. Some teams have had players that have come back to the team after extended time away due to injury or whatever else. I look at Northern Iowa being a team that's playing much better basketball. Monmouth is in that list. And then there are other teams like Marist that have injuries and players that are likely not to come back this season. And the complexity of the team is just totally different. So you really want to hone in on the personnel, who's playing, who's not playing. Are teams motivated? Are they not? That's kind of where I'm at the last 2 weeks. Might be a little bit less volume for me, but I want to lock in on that to ensure that we're getting the best value on the board.
Yeah, two stories at the top of the sport. Kylan Boswell coming back for the Fighting Illini. I think that finally, I was obviously enamored with this Illinois team. Their offensive ceiling is just off the charts. But I wanted to see their point guard come back and prove with an injury that can be really tricky. It can be something that you can re-aggravate or you're just not the same player. He comes back. The shooting stroke isn't quite there, but in terms of him orchestrating the offense, you're seeing it in the assist to turnover ratio. He's able to push the right buttons right away, shaking the rust off. So I think, the sky's the limit now for his potential and what he means to Brad Underwood in this offense. And then sadly, on the other end of the spectrum, with JT Toppin unfortunately having the torn ACL being lost for the season, I have to light a gambling candle for my Texas Tech parlay. I took Texas Tech football to win the Big 12 regular season title, and then Texas Tech basketball to win the Natty at 178 to 1. I think that's up in smoke. I really think the absolute peak of this season with Toppin on the sideline is probably make it to the second weekend, lose by 10 points in the Sweet 16. But I will say this from a perspective of fading them, obviously the market is going to correct instantly on the Red Raiders. He's probably worth 5 to 6 points. He's one of the most impactful players in the entire country. If it wasn't for Boozer, he'd probably be right in the mix to win National Player of the Year, the Wooden Award, the Naismith, everything else. But McCausland is a coach that has no problem slowing things down and winning with his defense. That used to be his calling card. Do you think it's going to have a major impact on their totals moving forward?
Certainly could. It's really tough to say because that defense has not been A plus Texas Tech defense that we've come to know and love from the past, and Toppin really affected that side of the court really, with his presence on the defensive end. So I really don't know. I think we could see a little bit of a boost initially in this next game for Texas Tech. I think they host Kansas State. I think this is one where the players might be able to kind of rally the troops and maybe put it on K-State, who got a big home win against Baylor not long ago. I want to probably fade the Red Raiders at some point, but I don't think it's immediately this weekend. I definitely think there will be opportunities, as I just simply think they're going to be overmatched against premierly talented teams without Toppin in the fold. It's just a hard player to try to even attempt to replace. So I worry they may slow the pace, but I worry that the defense will be even less effective.
In terms of the futures, I start to slow down in terms of what I'm putting in the Action Network app, what I'm betting myself. The value starts to dry up a little bit. And I think you should start to shift your interest because some books will open up the conference tournament championship odds, a week or so ahead of the actual conference tournament. I think you can peg off, a few picks that potentially are not priced, accordingly, at least vis-a-vis your own power rankings. With that being said, last week I brought up UVA at 14 to 1 to make the Final Four. They went ahead, they took care of business, although they didn't cover by the hook against Ohio State in Nashville. And then they did what they needed to do against Georgia Tech and laid the wood there. Yet somehow in the market, they're now up to 20 to 1 to make that Final Four. So I'm going to double on back there and say this is a play you got to make. Maybe it's because there's such a clown car of elite teams at the top of the sport. There's, 8 teams that have higher Ken Palm ratings than the national champion last year. I understand that we're in this historic season and all the focus is on all of the NBA talent and the freshman talent at the top of this class and how good these teams are in the top 10. That being said, you're not going to get a region where you're going to get all 10 of these teams. You're going to get one or two of those, and it's the luck of the draw situation. If Virginia can play their way up to the 3 line, as I said last week, and avoid playing a 1 until the Elite Eight, hypothetically, holding a 20 to 1 ticket is a phenomenal position to be in. I still think the market is just slow to react to them. I think a part of it is just the optics and people not watching UVA basketball and having that image of the Tony Bennett regime, then the coaching, handoff that did not work before they got to Odom. What are your thoughts here? Are you even more interested in them at 20 to 1? And could you explain what this market movement is?
I mean, still a team that's flying under the radar. They're 23 and 3 are the Wahoos. They have a 5 point loss against a UNC team that was loaded at the time. They have a 3 overtime loss on the road against Virginia Tech and an early season loss against Butler, but they've just blown through everybody that they've played in the ACC. This is a rock solid defensive team. They rank first in the ACC in effective field goal percentage, 2 and 3 point defense, blocked and altered shots. Just a really buttoned up defensive team that can absolutely get to the second weekend and beyond. And if you get Virginia in the Sweet 16 and get them in the right matchup, it would surprise many people, but it really wouldn't surprise me to see this team in an Elite Eight game. And then you're just talking about possibly finding a place to hedge that out. You'll be in a great equity position in the wager. And Virginia, I had written down 80 to 1 to win the whole thing. Just a really buttoned up team that is they execute in the half court. They can run in transition. They don't turn the ball over. DeRitter can score the ball. Malik Thomas, Chance Mallory. I mean, they have so many weapons. Just one of those teams that just keeps flying under the radar. And so I think if you really feel confident about Virginia, as I do, I mean, now's the time to strike on that because once they get to the Sweet 16, all that value is going to be dried up. And I think that it's a team that still has opportunities to play their way up, play their way off the 4 line, and possibly get into that 3 line. So, yeah, I think that that's a good look for Virginia.
Your future that you want to bring to the table here for the conversation is Mr. Final Four, Tom Izzo. What I believe, what 13 to 1? Is that what I'm reading correctly on the Spartans to make it to the national semifinal? There's plenty to like about them. Obviously, the coaching acumen is there. The front court is intriguing and deep, and they have the kind of rugged kind of style that can work in that half court March Madness, slower paced kind of scenario. My only concern is Fears and his usage. At times, it seems like he's running out of gas. You can see it. He's in a bit of a shooting slump. But they beat Illinois because he still can get to the line so many times. I think he took 13 foul shots against the Fighting Illini. So even when his shots aren't falling, he can still be an offensive engine. What else do you like about the Spartans at this price point?
I mean, if you just look at the profile, they're 10th in Ken Palm, sixth most efficient defense in the entire country, one of the best rebounding teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament. They don't give up second chance opportunities. Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper really are tough down low. The offense is fairly balanced and blended. You've got more than just Fears out there. I look at Cohen Carr and the rest of the group really able to get it done. I like the pedigree of Izzo getting into the NCAA tournament. I was going back and forth on this between a 50 to 1 natty or a 13 to 1 to make the final four. And I think the 13 to 1 is the better bet because if they were to get there, they're probably going to be at least plus 120 on the money line in the next couple of games. If you wanted to roll that in, you could get all the way to a plus 6,200 after getting Michigan State to the Final Four. So I do think that that's the better bet at current. I mean, Michigan State has proven that when they put it all together and when that defense is locked in, they're very, very tough to score on. They took Michigan to the wire. I mean, this is a team that can play with just about anybody when they're on. And I think, the season, there's these four quadrants of the season where you talk about the first half of the season in the non-conference, and then you get into the first half of the conference slate, second half of conference slate, and then that fourth quadrant, which we're soon to be entering, is postseason. And teams are going to be motivated. They're going to show up ready to go more often than not. And I just feel like this is another team that has a little bit of value. I wouldn't hold this ticket all the way necessarily, but I think that you look up at the bracket in the Sweet 16 and beyond, and you see Michigan State, and I just feel like nobody would be surprised about that. I think this is a talented bunch. I think the draw is important. And that's another thing you said to kind of be a little bit more reserved on the futures market. A lot of this is going to come down to the draw at the end of the day. So you really need to get a little bit of lottery luck come Selection Sunday. But Michigan State is one of those teams that I think has the pieces that can put together, and they have the right formula to put together a run.
All right, first question coming in. This person clearly has been listening to our show, the way that this is framed. So this one's for you, Duck. In terms of Darren Peterson, because of his will he, won't he, how many minutes is he going to play? Is he going to take over? Is he going to shut it down? With that in mind, would you prefer, but given the choice between the two, taking Kansas at 20 to 1 to win the national championship, or a hypothetical of the 14 seeded Navy midshipmen to upset the 3rd seeded Kansas Jayhawks at 9 to 1, heads up in the round of 64?
Oh, I would want the upset. Absolutely would want Navy to go in there and slow the pace down to a snail's crawl, play 58 possessions, have a defensive game. Maybe you get some hot shooting from Austin Benini and Kim and some of those guys. And I just think Navy presents so many matchup problems. They're the most athletic team. They're not overly athletic, but they are the most athletic team in the Patriot League, and they have a domineering post presence on both ends of the floor. And if Kansas isn't knocking down shots, and if Peterson has the flu or just decides he's not going to go tonight, it's which wouldn't happen in the NCAA tournament, but I think Navy's going to be a real feisty out for anybody. And if they win out, you mentioned Navy clinching the Patriot League, and they were so far ahead. But I think Navy still has motivation to continue to win their league games down the stretch and then perform very well in the Patriot League tournament. One, they've struggled in the Patriot League tournament for years, even having a top two seed. But second, if they were to win the rest of their games and get to Selection Sunday with another five wins, they may get into that 14 line. And I think it's really important. The difference between a 14 and a 15 could make all the difference. Playing a three seed team or a two seed team be really tough for them to have to match up against Duke or Houston. But if they get to the 14 line, I think they'll have a chance to win a game.
Before we get to our fast break, where we're going to give out 7 or 8 picks in about 5 minutes, check out the Parlay Express account and the free award-winning Action Network app, where you're going to find all kinds of fun long shot bets and parlays in there as well. You can also find the quick slip link in the podcast and YouTube description on the right where the chat is if you want to tail any of the bets that we're giving out here. All right, Duck, let's get into our card. Let's start on Friday in the MAC. Talk to me about the Zips laying a big number.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun game. I wrote this one up on the Action app, so you can go there or actionnetwork.com and see the full preview. But surprising to many people, if you followed MAC basketball, it may not be. But if you just know about Miami of Ohio, the last team that's undefeated, the Spread Hawks have been a great story. I think Akron may be the best team, the strongest team, the most athletic team in the MAC. And the Zips defense has been the biggest surprise for John Gross this season in this Akron squad. They're first in defensive efficiency, first in field goal percentage surrendered. 2-point defense is also at the top of the league. And now they're squaring off against Ball State. That is just atrocious on the offensive end. In the first meeting, Ball State was down 74 to 52 with about 7 minutes to go. They did make a little bit of a run in the last 7 minutes to only lose by 10. I'm not so sure we see it play out this way this time around tonight. Ball State's coming off a bad loss against Ohio where they scored just 15 points in the first half. They shot 5 out of 18 from deep. But the physicality of Mahaffey and Amani Lyles down low are going to be just too much. Ball State has a really, really bad defensive unit, and they are the worst three-point defense in the MAC. Akron made 12 out of 28 from deep against Western Michigan on the road earlier this week, and they collected 13 offensive rebounds. You're going to have second chance points for Akron. You're going to get trips to the line. It's just such a different mismatch in athleticism between Akron and Ball State. I think the Zips are fully locked in. They really showed me a lot on Tuesday against Western Michigan. I think they win this game. I would, I'm going to lay the 14 and a half. I already have, but I think they win this game by 20 plus.
I'm going to go with a bigger game here on Friday night, and it is Indiana traveling to Mackey to take on the Purdue Boilermakers. I was fine laying up to 13. It looks like it's about 11 and a half out in the market. Mackey's going to be on fire. It's going to be an absolute zoo here for a revenge spot. They're also coming off a humbling loss against Michigan where they, made it look a little bit closer in the box score, but they really didn't have a chance, down the stretch. And losing at Assembly Hall to the Hoosiers, I think everything puts this from a motivational emotional standpoint for Purdue to win going away here. Indiana, by the way, on the road, lost by 20 at Illinois, 14 at Michigan, 21 at Michigan State, 9 at the barn against Minnesota. You can beat them up and cover big numbers when you're playing IU on your home floor. And Matt Painter, by the way, I brought this up earlier in the week on our BBOC midweek show. One of the best coaches in the country against the spread after a loss, and he's got a huge sample size. This goes all the way back to when he started in West Lafayette in 2005. He's covered 56% of the time following a loss in his career. That's the seventh best number among power conference teams in the past 21 years. Perhaps some three-point regression also could be on their side. Recent games against Michigan and Nebraska, the Wolverines and Cornhuskers shot 46% combined from three-point range. The Hoosiers also made 12 triples in their matchup against the Boilermakers in round one. I think this, if the threes are not falling for Indiana, this is going to be a runaway. And also, I played it two different ways in the app. It was one of my larger power conference plays from a unit perspective on the entire season. But also, I put in a same game parlay, just piggybacking off our man Christian. He loves, TKR to go over 15 points in this one. And I can't necessarily disagree with him. When you look at his game log this year, kind of just doing some quick back of the napkin math, he's, been boom or bust. I don't feel like this is one you're going to get burned by him getting stuck on 13 points and not getting touches or getting pulled out late in a blowout. I think he's either going to cruise past this or he's going to stay in single digits. And in that first meeting against Indiana, they gave him a lot of post touches. He took up 14 shots in that game, scored 23 points. So when you put it together, you're getting plus 240, plus 250, depending on your book. I think that's a nice way to attack this because I think it is a correlated event. And sometimes you have to take a haircut on that in a same game parlay. But at least the ones that I punched in at a few major books, it was still lucrative. So that's where I am on a big matchup in the Big Ten on Friday night. Let's now head to Saturday for you, talking about a team that, man, watching them, it's difficult to figure out where they're at between the years in terms of motivation, in terms of emotional state. Syracuse, you're going to take the points. Sell me on it.
I mean, North Carolina certainly felt the effects of missing Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar. It looked really ugly on the road the last two outings. They were destroyed by NC State on Tuesday, and they lost their previous road contest against Miami prior to that. This is all in the wake of just recently beating Duke at the buzzer, and now these guys are in danger of falling out of the top 25. I get it, Mike. Like Syracuse, I do not love. It's such seat of your pants hoops. It really requires a lot to go right. And the Orange have lost 7 out of 10 down the stretch. But now you have a team that is playing with complete desperation. A team that earlier this year defeated Tennessee, took Houston to the wire. They are athletic, they have talent. And if I'm Adrian Autry, I'm approaching these last four games. Every one of them is a must win for the NCAA tournament. I think if they do that, if they win out, and they get two wins in the ACC tournament, you'll have a team profiling that sits at 10-8 in league play, 21-12 overall. I hate to say it, but that's an NCAA tournament profile if they were to win out and then win two games in the ACC tournament. I don't know that they're going to do that, but that has to be the mindset that they have to win out every single game. And UNC is just reeling. They're banged up. They're not even close to the same team that defeated Duke just a couple of weeks back, and I'm getting 3.5 at home with the Qs. This is a spot where I want to back Syracuse.
All right, let's go back in time to Friday nights, another MAC matchup, Bowling Green and Miami of Ohio. You talked about the Spread Hawks. I tried to call my shot. I had played them effectively, had some pregame wins, some live bets when they fell down against like Northern Illinois. Lots of different opportunities to bet and win on Miami this year. But I think we're sleeping on how reliable they've been as an over bet this year, cashing 70% of the time in terms of pushing over the closing total. And, that's the seventh highest rate in Division One. Now, Bowling Green's on the other side of things. 70% of the time they're cashing the under. But I think what's clear when you look at their resume, particularly within MAC play, when they are sped up, when they play teams that pull them out of their, I think they're just about dead on mediocre in terms of tempo, not too fast, not too slow. But when they played Akron, UMass, and Kent, some of the speedier teams in the MAC, Javante Campbell has just got the green light to just try to shoot them, over the hump in those games. He averaged 27 points per game on 15 shots and a staggering 15 foul shots per game playing against the Zips, the Minutemen, and the Golden Flashes. And when they did go up against Miami in round one, there's 176 total points scored in that game. So this one's sitting at 153 and a half. I said it on the show, I still believe it, up to 155. I still think this is an over. I think as long as we get a vintage game out of Campbell, and at least in round one against Miami team that we're certainly not enamored with their defense, he was efficient. He was 7 for 11 from the field. I think he needs to rev that up to closer to his average, playing against those more up-tempo teams in this conference. Take 15, 16 shots. I think they're going to be playing from behind. They're not going to have the luxury to slow it down against a Miami offense that it's pick your poison. It's just really some of the most beautiful basketball in mid-major, basketball in recent history. When you watch them play, it almost seems at times like you're just praying for the regression monster to hit from three-point range because there's no way to stop them from getting open looks. All right, before we get to your next pick, do you have anything to add on Miami in that particular play?
Yeah, I talked about it earlier in the week, but Miami had gone through some stretches where you could kind of feel the Red Hawks playing tight and tense on the road in league play. They were just trying to hang on. We didn't see the Red Hawks attacking late in the second half. They were chewing clock early, and it just looked a little bit wonky and jerky, and that's why we saw them play some tighter games. They scored back-to-back games of 90 points against Marshall and Ohio University, and then last game on Tuesday of this week against UMass. In the final 10 minutes, they scored 26 points. They are changing their mentality late in games. They're pursuing scoring opportunities. If they're breaking a press, they're going to the hole. They're shooting early in the possession. It is much more of an offensive sense of urgency for Travis Steele and this Red Hawks team. I like that when you get into a situation where you're up 7 to 10 points late because you're not just chewing the clock. Bowling Green is, you're going to get a lot of fouls in this game. The first meeting had 47 foul attempts. It's going to be a constant barrage. I think both these teams will get into the bonus early. You'll have plenty of opportunities for points to be scored with the clock stopped. I like this overplay here. I think this is one where you look at Bowling Green, they're going to go out there and take a swing. Miami's going to get everybody's remaining best chance and best shot here. And I think Bowling Green does have some pieces offensively that can do some things against Miami's defense, which has been good and efficient, but it's far from exquisite lockdown defense, even in the max. So I don't know necessarily why this one is as low as it is. I think it's probably fairly priced. Doesn't seem as though there's been too big of an adjustment made. I would want to play the over here. I think we'll see a lot of foul shots. I think we'll see late game fouling triggered when that spreads about 6 to 8 points. This one should eke over.
All right, getting back to your Saturday card, UNC Wilmington Campbell. Obviously, it's your hometown team. You've been at the Trask all season long. A two-parter here. UNCW has been a launching pad for coaches. You had, Keats make his way up to a power conference job. Do you think Siddle is overdue for this? No matter what happens with this season, do you think this could be his last in Wilmington? And if so, do you think there's anything that you would like to see them do from a stylistic perspective, anything in the conference tournament? Because when I look at their season-long numbers, there's a lot to like, but there's something in the pit of my stomach where I feel like it may be an early bounce from the CAA tournament. I know it's a lot of questions. So what do you think about the head coach? What do you think about their postseason chance in conference tournament play? And then get into this total between the Seahawks and the Camels.
I mean, I like Siddle. I think he's a player's coach. He really does well to put rosters together, and they have been fairly consistent during his tenure here. I would imagine he's a guy that gets looks at bigger jobs. He hasn't really provided a lot of urgency from what I can tell that he's dying to get out of here. So I hope he sticks around and we get him another year, but I won't be surprised at all if somebody else comes calling and he gets a little bit more money and whatever else. Stylistically, what you're going to get is. UNC Wilmington was absent for so long of a killer instinct. They struggled to put teams away, and they still do to an extent, but it's a very gritty group. They play cohesively together, they communicate well. The defense has been really hard to score on the last 7 minutes of second halves. And it all kind of leads up to what I think is going to happen in their next game. They go to Campbell. The over-under is projected about 153. Wilmington just refuses to get sped up. Last night we saw Monmouth press the entire second half, and UNCW struggled at times breaking that press, but when they did break it, there was no real pursuit of trying to score. They were setting up in the half court, and there was just not a lot of urgency there. I look at what the Seahawks are doing. They've played games of 60, 64, 68, 60, and 61 total possessions the last 3 weeks, and they are hanging their hat on defense. As long as Patrick Wessler can stay out of foul trouble, he is just such a force in the post. You're not going to get entry passes. Shots are going to be blocked or altered. You're going to have one and done possessions, as you're not going to collect offensive rebounds against these guys. But also guys like Nolan Hodge and Noah Ross, they can hedge a little bit down low to try to make it tougher to get entries into the post. And Campbell, I mean, they're not going to hit 14 threes like they did last game they played against William and Mary. I think we're going to see this one be a slow burning grinder. Wilmington's not going to get sped up, but Campbell has also played significantly slower of late. At home against Charleston earlier this week, game ended 62 to 57 and played to just 61 total possessions. It never approached the posted total. Campbell wants to play fast, but they are not good at controlling the tempo here, and these Camels are not going to be able to speed up UNCW in any way here. I think for the Seahawks coming off two hugely important CAA games against Hofstra and Monmouth, now you go on the road. The Seahawks have had slower starts in the first half, but they've also held their opponents to 31, 24, and 32 points in the first half their last three. I could just see this one being a slower start. It trends under the entire way. And again, UNCW's defense, the last 4 minutes in their last three games has completely been shut down. I think the last 4 minutes will be a grind. We won't get a lot of scoring bursts here. This total, I think, is absurd. If it's 152, 153, I'm absolutely playing the under here.
All right, we got three more games on Saturday to go through. I'll pick up the pace here a little bit. Illinois staying in LA. They just laid the wood. They beat USC by 36 points. They make the 20-minute crosstown trip to take on UCLA. 6.5 is not enough, and I'm going to plant my flag here. Illinois can reach a 1 seed now that UConn has stumbled down the stretch. Houston, Iowa State, Arizona State. There's a bit of cannibalism going on in the Big 12, and teams are starting to rack up some losses after Arizona started with what 23 wins on the year, and now they have two losses there. I don't think that's where it's going to stop in terms of the bleeding. So Illinois has an opportunity. The door is ajar, but they need to make a statement win. This isn't just about winning on the road for the committee. It's winning, getting the dub with a little bit of style points added onto it. So I think this is an opportunity to bury Mick Cronin and this UCLA team that seems to be a ship that's taken on water. And as I mentioned at the top, Boswell is back in the fold. I wanted to target a spot after his first game back, so I played them on the money line against USC. It seems like I could have laid a bajillion points in that game and still covered. But that being said, he still looks good. I would like to see some of the jumpers falling, but that only takes their, overall ceiling to a higher level. The Fighting Illini, keep in mind, their offensive rating per Ken Palm is 132 and a half, which is the highest in the history of the database that goes back to 1997. It's 1.5% better than the second best offense ever recorded in the Ken Palm system. And this Cronin defense, by the way, this is the time that you want to catch them because earlier in the year, they were clearly like a top 40 defense in, basically every metric that you could find. But per Torvik, in the last month, the Bruins are 182nd in adjusted defensive efficiency. And now they have to deal with that Illinois pick and roll clinic. Underwood and his staff, they do such a good job matchup hunting. He talks about this a lot in the offseason. He does specialty camps and coaching clinics where he gets into it. It's all about targeting the worst defender on the floor. In most cases, teams put the worst defender on the floor because they happen to be their best offensive player on the other end. So they can't hide them, they can't take them off. And what he does is because this offense is so versatile, he has so many shooters they can score in so many different ways. He's just going to attack relentlessly. And I think blood's in the water here. So I like the fighting line. I play it all the way up to the verge of 10 points here. Maybe, an alternate line if you're looking for some plus money. If they win this one and everything clicks, I think they're going to crush this Bruin team. What are your thoughts on UCLA? Obviously, returning home, licking their wounds from a very embarrassing road trip. They've been a tough out at home. I understand that's what's predicated and that's what's baked into this line and why it's not a double digits. But if you're just looking at how they've been playing on the defensive ends, there hasn't been a lot of fight. And now you're drawing the best offensive team potentially in the last 25 years.
Well, yeah, and I mean, they've been tough at home because they've been playing Maryland, Northwestern, Rutgers, Washington. I mean, that Purdue win a month ago seems like such a long time ago, and now Illinois is getting healthier. They're getting Boswell back. They're so dangerous at all five positions. You've got so many guys that can score the basketball in so many different ways. So efficient. It's a dangerous group. I'm glad that we talked about Illinois a month ago and built them into our futures portfolio because I think the Illini are poised to make a really deep run. I don't think 6.5 is enough. I don't think UCLA is a very good basketball team. The travel gets mitigated a little bit with Illinois already being out there and just traveling across town for this one. I think we see really good basketball from them. I'm going to be joining you here and laying the 6.5.
Now it's exciting when something comes full circle here on the weekend warm up. You talked about Pepperdine. You have to evaluate them in a new way at this point in the season. How does that come down the line here with the total on Saturday night?
I mean, it's not nearly a big enough adjustment. I don't know if it's been adjusted at all. In fact, I would encourage anybody to just go look at the metrics for Pepperdine, and it's just a team that Ed Schilling started this season with the Waves wanting to play a slow pace, defensive focus style, and they were playing games at 62, 61, 66 possessions. But over the last month, that has been completely thrown out the window. Pepperdine's not even trying to play defense, and the possession counts 80, 77, 73, 77, 74. It's just so much faster paced basketball. They just gave up 87 points on Wednesday against Portland. And the thing about this for Pepperdine is they've actually won their last two games doing this. They defeated Loyola Marymount and they defeated Portland. So I think we're going to continue to see this style. Where I'm going with this is that they're playing Oregon State. Oregon State's got their final Saturday home game of the season. The projected total is up. Some of these Torvik and Ken Palm and some of these others are starting to make some slight adjustments, but I don't think it's nearly enough. This was 142 projected earlier in the week. Now it's 144. I'm going Oregon State team total over about 75, 75 and a half, and full game over 144. Oregon State has been so much more aggressive in getting the ball into the paint. They're getting paint touches for guys like Isaiah Sy, Johan Munch, Yak Yak, and points in the paint. Oregon State might have 50 of them. It's just the style has been so drastically corrected from one end to the other, and the books just have not caught up with it. But Pepperdine scores. I mean, they're playing games where both teams are in the 80s or 90s even. You want the over here on Saturday afternoon or Saturday night, excuse me. Oregon State's going to score a ton of points. Pepperdine could even win this game, but both these teams could be in the 80s.
I'm going to close it out in the Mountain West. Wyoming traveling to play Grand Canyon. The Antelopes laying 10. Wyoming has one true road win the entire year, and it was at Air Force, who is absolutely cheeks. The Flyboys are 3-23 straight up over in Mountain West play, so I am not impressed by the Pokes getting that road win. On the other side, the Antelopes are hot. They just knocked off San Diego State at the Viejas Arena, a really, really difficult place to win. They've also been a strong double-digit favorite this year, and you want to start looking at that, in terms of a body of work this late in the year. You get a feel for how teams close out games. Do they keep the foot on the accelerator? Do they play just to win by a possession or two? They're clearly a team that runs through the tape. They also went to Laramie and beat this Cowboy team by 12, a game in which they entered as a dog and they end up winning outright. And Bryce Drew is just an elite mid-major coach. He won big at Valpo. He goes to Vandy and everything goes wrong. He gets burns. He needs a full refresh. He's got that and more coaching it up in the desert. At this point, showing no ill effects from moving from the WAC to the Mountain West. They're knocking off some of the best teams here in this conference. They're special defensively. They can rebound on both ends, and their Turkish freshman F.A. Demirel is coming on late. He's over 7 feet tall, and he's not the only one, by the way, in terms of their overall size. They have him at 7'1". They get Bryden back off the bench at 6'10". They have a really good team height. They're actually in the top 20 in overall height in the entire country and making them one of the biggest mid majors. So I still think this is a team that is going to be an interesting wild card in the Mountain West tournament. I'd love to get the right kind of number on them to win it. They're going to have to go through some really good teams in Utah State, in New Mexico, in that San Diego State team that they knocked out. But I don't think that you can rule them out. Really, what they need from me, just speaking about the Mountain West tournament, not necessarily this matchup against the Wyoming Cowboys, is that they need Brian Moore Jr. to play more like he did at Norfolk, where he was the offensive player of the year in that conference. He had the green light to shoot as much as he wanted because last year and this year, 39% from three, 39% from three. The guy can absolutely fill it up, but he doesn't have a game in which he's taken more than 4 3-pointers all season for the Lopes. They got to get him to shoot 6 or 7 threes a game, particularly if they want to get that variance to work in their favor. And all of a sudden, if you shoot 35, 40% from three in a game, then you can knock off a Utah State. Then you can cut down the nets and get back to March Madness. What are your thoughts here on this particular game? Wyoming going from, their altitude advantage down to playing Grand Canyon, and then also GCU potentially to make a run and to cash a big ticket. I'm hoping to get them at close to, double digits to win the Mountain West Conference tournament.
This is a game they should win, and they had a strong performance on the road on Tuesday night against San Diego State. The Post just completely overwhelmed Guath and San Diego State's Post players. I was really surprised by that. I would want the under in this game. Wyoming had started the year with Sundance Wicks really trying to play an up-tempo style, but the last 5, 6 conference games, Wyoming has really throttled down their pace. The problem with Wyoming is their defense is so inefficient and terrible that even in a game at 62, 63 possessions, both these teams could be in the 70s because Wyoming's defense has regressed. And Grand Canyon can get blazing hot from the outside, and they can put a 12-3 run on you in 2 minutes, and you're toast. So I'll probably stay off the total on this one. The other question is, to answer your other question, I think Grand Canyon is very live and very dangerous in this tournament. They swept San Diego State in the regular season. They've already beaten Utah State. Right now, they're slotted at the 4 position, and if they stay there, then that would mean they would likely only have to play one of San Diego State and New Mexico in a potential final, and they'll have a real chance to prove it on February 28th going to Utah State. If they win that game, they will have swept San Diego State and Utah State. Very dangerous team that's emerging at the right time. They do have a little bit of a propensity because of their pace, and if the offense isn't clicking, they can get stuck and go 5, 6 minutes without scoring a single point, and that's a problem you need to avoid. But if the futures price is right, I think Grand Canyon, and this is not just chinwag either, I think this is a legitimately dangerous team to win the Mountain West and steal a bid.
Yeah, when you talk about their work against the top teams, they also, got off to a really slow start against New Mexico on
Came
their
back,
on their home floor. They had a
came all the
lead
way
with about
back.
6 minutes to go, and they had a chance. So I really do think price dependent. I'd probably say I need at least 7-1, and then I'll pull the trigger on it. Where it's a really a top loaded kind of league where any of those four teams cutting down the nets would not surprise me. And almost all of them need that to be able to feel as they're going to be in the field of 68. Certainly in GCU's case, they have no at-large opportunity. They got to win the automatic berth. But yeah, I think we're on the same page on this GCU team, and I'm hoping that from a pace perspective and an offensive consistency perspective, that we get to the finish line here and they don't have one of those second half droughts where all of a sudden I have to sweat out, laying the points here at just about 10 against Wyoming. I don't know if it popped yet in the market. Any other thoughts on the Mountain West before we wrap up?
It's just such an interesting league. I think the totality of the league is down, but there's four teams that are dangerous. I mean, how many teams get in? Is it two in the Mountain West? Are we certain it's only two, or is
I,
it
I,
only
I
one?
I think it's only two. I do think one of them between San Diego State and New Mexico is going to be the beneficiary of probably getting to the Mountain West Championship game. I'm going to put that in air quotes. If they do, I think that'll be enough vis-a-vis the rest of their resume. And Utah State, I think, should feel pretty safe at this point. They are projected on the 7 line per bracket matrix, but there's always the wild card as well. But if Grand Canyon were to punch the automatic ticket, I think that probably sinks the battleship of a New Mexico or a San Diego State. Because if they were to lose a one possession or a 5 point game to Utah State in the title game, I still think that doesn't necessarily ding them or hurt them. For whatever reason, the committee, I think they get enamored with some of the numbers where all of a sudden they look at losing to Grand Canyon in a different light. Where realistically, I think there's Utah State is the A squad, and then there's a lot of teams that are just so close, clustered together in terms of overall quality. And I'll put, GCU in that mix as well.
Could you imagine if Utah State goes 27-4 in the regular season, loses in the Mountain West final, and they end up in Dayton?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put it past this committee. They're always talking out of both sides of their mouth, where the conference tournaments don't matter for the power conference teams, but then they reward some. And what Michigan won it last year, and they still had the 5 seed. Their grand prize was to play one of the best, mid-major or low majors in UC San Diego, whose coach is now at New Mexico. So a lot of it doesn't make sense. I think also people just need to realize that even though the metrics have stayed the same and the math and the resources, every year the committee is a little bit different. There's different voices in the room, there's different personal preferences. So it's just too difficult to tell, but they just continually shaft these mid-major leagues. I mean, the Mountain West is a really good mid-major league. I don't think there's any reason for them to be sweating to get two, but there's no guarantee that they're going to get two. They need a certain set of events to happen down the stretch to get two, and then kind of a dream scenario for them to get three. But all these teams are dangerous at the top of the league. All right, that's going to do it for us here at the weekend warm up. We appreciate you for tuning in for your questions along the way. Don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app. Leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. Or if you're listening here on YouTube, please subscribe and hit a like as well. Search for BBOC so that you can keep track of all of our content. We have our live show tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. That'll be with Christian, with Stuckey, with Greg Waddell, and myself. Thanks for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets. We'll see you at the window.